Hi guys, welcome to Bonnet and Blade. This is our last video in Caithness and I hope you really do enjoy it. I say our last video, that's wrong. It's our last video from this trip. We hope to have a few others very soon. But meanwhile, we're going to tell you a little bit about some older times in history. So let's begin. In Caithness, the landscape is layered with thousands of years of history. From the first farming communities of the Neolithic to the later world of the Iron Age. Across this region, you'll find ancient stone sites that still don't fully make sense. Places built long before written history and long before we really understood the people that built them. In this video, we're exploring a few of those sites, starting with one of the most mysterious Neolithic monuments in Scotland. Out here in Caithness, not far from Wick, you'll find something pretty incredible. And honestly, it's kind of eerie. These are the great Cairns of Camster. And they're not just old, they're ancient. To really understand this place, you've got to go back, way back to the Neolithic period. To get your head round that, that's roughly between 4,000 and 2,500 BC in Britain. And it was a huge turning point in human history. It's before the pyramids in Egypt. This is when people started settling down, farming and building permanent communities. Before that, most people were moving around, hunting, gathering, following food. But in the Neolithic, everything changes. People start shaping the landscape, clearing land, building structures that were meant to last. And not just houses, but monuments. All across Britain, and especially up here in the north of Scotland, you could start to see these stone buildings and sites appear. Places like the great Cairns of Camster, and whatever their exact purpose was, they clearly mattered, because building something like this wasn't a quick or easy. It would have taken planning, effort, and a lot of people working together. And here's what's really interesting. Neolithic people weren't just surviving. They were thinking about time, memory, maybe even belief systems we don't fully understand. Across Europe, you see similar patterns. Large stone structures, carefully aligned spaces, and places that seem designed for gatherings or rituals. But what's the meaning behind them? That's where things get unclear. We're talking about structures that were built around 3000 BC, which makes them older than the pyramids of Egypt. From a distance, they don't look like much. Just these long, low mounds of stones sitting in the middle of nowhere. But that's kind of the point. These cairns were built to last and to blend into the landscape. The roof structures were complicated. They were freestanding, held without mortar or structure, a bit like the Roman arches that are held together with gravity and keystones. The stone structures on these roofs also tied together with keystones. That's very clever engineering, especially for back then. There are actually two main cairns here, Camster Long and Camster Round. They're often described as ancient tombs, but the truth is, we don't actually know exactly what these were used for. There have been some human remains found in similar cairns, but not enough here to say for certain how these spaces were used or who they were for. So this space is usually described as a burial chamber. But here's the thing, there isn't enough evidence to say that with complete confidence that's what it is. Very few human remains have been found here. Not enough to clearly show that this was used as a communal tomb in the way people often imagine. So what was it? It could have been used for burials, but it might also have been some kind of ritual or ceremonial purpose. Some theories even suggest these sites could have been used for offerings or activities we don't fully understand today. All this is where it gets really interesting, because unlike places where we have clear evidence, sites like this sit right on the edge of what we think we know. Were these tombs? Are they ritual spaces? Something else entirely. The honest answer is, we're not sure. It's easy to project modern ideas into places like this. Burial, ceremonial, religion. But the people who built these cairns live in a completely different world. Different beliefs and different meanings. And whatever this place was used for, it mattered enough for them to build something that would last thousands of years. The grey cairns of Camster aren't just ancient structures, they're unanswered questions. And maybe that's what makes them so powerful. Not what we know, but what we're still trying to figure out. So, what's a broch? They are these incredible circular stone towers built here in Scotland around 2,000 years ago during the Iron Age. You mostly find them up here in the north in places like Caithness. And whilst we don't know exactly how they were used day to day, they were likely homes, defensive structures, or maybe even a way of showing status and power. But whatever their purpose, they've lasted all this time. And standing here, you really get a sense of how impressive they must have been. These brochs date back to Iron Age, a period when people started using iron tools for weapons, roughly from 800 BC to the early centuries AD. Most of them are found in the far north of Scotland, and Caithness actually has a really high concentration of these towers. But they weren't limited to the north. You can find examples as far south as Dumfries and Galloway, Stirling, and even the Scottish borders. But just as an observation, it is quite strange how they're at the north of Scotland, the south of Scotland, and a small scattering in the middle. and nowhere else. I just found that fascinating. Anyway, life in the Iron Age was all about small farming communities, raising animals, and building settlements that were stronger and more permanent than anything ever before. And while we don't have written records, the structures they left behind, like brochs, tell us a lot about how skilled and organised these communities were. The broch is the predecessor to the Scottish Tower House, the famous Tower House castle that everyone knows, the square, long 3, 4, 5-storey buildings. The broch was the predecessor to this, if that helps to get it into your mind how they looked. One of the best investigated examples is Nybster Broch, perched right on the coast. Standing here, you start to get a real sense of the scale and the skill that went into building these incredible stone structures. The broch was first excavated in 1895 to 1896 by Tres Barry, and since then it's been the focus of community archaeological projects, including the Caithness Archaeological Trust and AOC Archaeology, right up until 2011. The broch itself is a circular tower with walls that are a staggering 4.7 metres thick in places. Inside, the central roundhouse has an internal diameter of about 6.2 metres, a multi-storey stone space built entirely from dry stone. People would have lived, stored food, and carried out daily life all within the walls. Excavations have shown that Nybster dates to the late Iron Age, with the earliest phase of construction going back to somewhere between the 2nd century BC and the 1st century AD. Later phases include the outbuildings around the main tower. They were added between the 1st and the 3rd century AD. Over the years, archaeologists have found all kinds of everyday objects, stone and bone tools, bits of pottery, grains of spelt. You can tell people were farming, fishing, keeping animals, and gathering wild foods. They also had items for personal use and even a bit of fun, gaming pieces, tools for leather work, bone work, textiles and ceramics. And with whetstones and anvils, it's clear they were using and sharpening iron tools right here. In 2017, 2 antler combs were dated to around the 1st century AD, and there's even a Roman bead and some Samian pottery, which shows Nybster wasn't just any village, it was a high status, connected to trade and craft. Another fascinating feature is the stone setting built into the broch's ramparts, some forming kist-like structures. One had pottery and worked tusk, other bits of copper alloy. Across Caithness, some brochs were used for burials in the early medieval period, though at Nybster no human bones were found recently. Tres Barry did report fragments of skulls, but we're not sure exactly where they came from. The takeaway: this broch wasn't just a tower, it was a hub of daily life, craft status, travel, a place where people worked, lived, played, and even traded with the wider world. Standing here today, you can still feel that history all around you. Once we've taken in the story of Nybster, it's just a short journey down the A9 southwards before you reach our next Iron Age broch. Ousdale Broch sits just off the main road. Some say it sits just off the main road. I wouldn't say it just sits off the main road. That was some hike we did. But anyway, that's another story. It sits between Hemsdale and Berriedale, only about 30 to 35 miles from Nybster. And it's another great example of these remarkable stone structures, this time with a very dramatic coastal setting. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have been walking and walking and walking, and finally, from snaking from way back over where that tree line is in the distance, we've got here. This is our second broch. This one has a slight twist, which is why we wanted to bring you here. Ousdale Broch. This isn't from the painted people, the Picts. This isn't from the Neolithic period of the Cairns. This is an Iron Age broch. So we have covered a number of centuries of history in one short video. This broch is 2,000 years old. As we said back at the time of the cairn, what does 2,000 years look like? 2,000 years looks like half of when the pyramids were made. It looks like a very long time since time began. In fact, it's right back when Jesus was walking the earth. Does that put it into perspective? So, we're here today at an Iron Age broch. It's right on the coast. Very similar to the last one, but this one feels so much more sheltered, doesn't it, Jess?
It does.
It's much warmer. We're getting later at night. As you can probably tell from the light on the camera, it's getting dusk. It's after 6 o'clock in winter time, so it's getting dusk. But already, it's so much warmer than where we were when we were at the last place. So, without further ado, let's have a walk round. Jess, please be careful, there's a sheer drop at this side. Yes, sheer drop. No slippies, please. What a broch. What a place. I'm hoping that this gives you an idea a little bit more about the Pictish one that we saw earlier. I'm hoping that this one will give you an idea of what it looked like. The slit door away from the prevailing wind. A large area. The gaps were to let light in, but they would also use it to have animals nearby. They would have the animals protected. The windowy type areas were also used as stores, fridges, that type of thing. Not like an electric fridge that we would plug in, but a cold area where stone would be outside and it would be protected from the wild animals. Scottish wildcat, bears, lynx, they were all around back in those days. So they had to protect themselves. And that's how they did it with this home. So I promised you a second broch, and here it is. I hope you're as excited to see it as we are. these amazing ancient parts of history just ooze with excitement for me. To try and understand what it's all about and try and picture families living here and how hard it would have been. That excites me. Please understand that the gravel that's down here, whilst it's lovely, that's for us. That's been put in for us to walk around and see and to stop it from deteriorating. They didn't have little chucky stones like that were nicely quarried. That didn't exist. This would have been heather floors. This would have been heather mattresses that they slept on. There's plenty of heather around. You can see even heather growing around the top. The roof would have been turf and heather. And that's how they would have survived. Smoke from the fires would have penetrated through the heather, which would have kept the bugs down, stopped it being infested with bugs, which would have helped them to be able to not have infestation of anything in their house. But they would have smelled of smoke all the time. There was no chimneys, so to speak. It just dissipated out of the building. And as I say, that helped keep pests at bay. So there was no bed bugs or woodworm or any of these type of things because of the smoke. But looking at the sheer drops, life must have been harsh. But what is also interesting is these barracks are always built near a fresh water supply. There's always fresh water running nearby, which is another fascination. But Jess, could you do me a favour and just pan round and let everyone see that there's nothing to see for miles around? Nothing. It's just nothingness. And this is what I mean by the Highland clearances. That would not have been the case prior to the Highland clearances. You'd have had villages, you'd have had all sorts around here. It's pre the Highland clearances. There's towns, and that is it. The rest is just gone.
There's a real cool community initiative behind a lot of this Broch's work. It's called the Caithness Broch project. It started back in 2013 as a grassroots idea to celebrate and protect the amazing Iron Age heritage all around this county, Caithness. Caithness has more brochs than anywhere else in Scotland, so there's a real story to tell here. The project does more than just talk about brochs. They've been involved in conservation work at places like Ousdale, helping with signage and site access so visitors can appreciate these ancient towers. They've also organised archaeological festivals, community digs, bringing in volunteers, school groups to take part in real archaeological activities, and they've made real great windy paths that take you twice as long to get to the Broch. Only kidding, it was great fun and beautiful scenery. One of their big long-term goals is something really ambitious: to build a full-size replica of an Iron Age Broch right here in Caithness, using the same dry stone techniques ancient builders would have used. Once complete, it could become a living history attraction, with demonstrations of Iron Age life, workshops on traditional stone work, and a centre for visitors to experience what these places were really like. Being a reenactor, it's amazing when you actually reenact something, how much history you actually learn. So from my point of view, I think this is a great thing, and think that we would learn so much more about Brochs and why and what they did. It would answer the questions. So I'm a great believer in this project totally. It's a great example of how archaeologically, or even archaeology, can bring communities together and make history feel alive, rather than just something in the past. That's us come to the end of our videos up in Caithness. We hope you've enjoyed the little series of videos in Caithness, as we have making them for you. We hope to be back up here soon, and we hope to be bringing you new videos from new areas very soon too. But from me, Dr. Grant, that's bye for now. I'm just going to hand you over to our amazing research assistant, cameraman and editor.
Bye!
So that's a bye from Jess. So, hope you've enjoyed the videos, and we hope to see you again here soon on the channel. But before I go, please don't forget to like, subscribe, do the usual stuff, guys. It really does help our algorithm, helps us to get noticed, and it helps all the work we put into these videos get recognised. Thanks again, guys. Look forward to seeing you in the next one.